The storm rolled in like it had something to prove. I remember the way the clouds looked, low, bruised, swollen with rain that seemed to hang in the air before finally letting go. By the time I clocked out of the shop, the world looked like it had been pressure washed. The roads shimmered like glass, the sky a flat gray that made everything feel heavier than it already was. I was soaked before I even reached my car. Not that it mattered, I was already covered in grease and sweat from the 11-hour shift. A guy came in right before closing with a busted radiator and a sob story about needing to drive to a funeral. I should have told him to come back Monday. Instead, I stayed. That's who I am. Or maybe who I was. When I finally slumped into the driver's seat, my phone buzzed. One message. From Madison. Dinner at Jason's. Don't be weird. No drama. No hello. No, I miss you. No concern about whether I'd made it through my day without breaking down from exhaustion. Just a command like I was a stray dog she was trying to keep from embarrassing her in public. Jason was her boss. Architect. Crisp shirt kind of guy. Always wore shoes too clean for someone who claimed he liked hiking. I'd met him once, one of those cold handshakes paired with a look that said, I know you're not one of us. He ran a boutique architecture firm downtown. Madison had been working for him for the past year. At first, I was happy for her, new job, new confidence. But soon the job turned into late hours and the confidence felt more like distance. His countryside house was where his firm usually did their off-sites, little bonding retreats, wine tastings, design jams. No spouses allowed. That was the rule. But this time, apparently, I made the cut. Why? I asked her that, actually texted back, why am I invited? She just replied. Just come. It'll look weird if you don't. It'll look weird. Not, I want you there. Not, I miss you. Just, it'll look weird. So I drove. Through pounding rain and rising dread, I drove. The house was what you'd expect from someone like Jason, sleek, cold, filled with mid-century furniture no one actually sits on, and art that looks like someone spilled coffee on a napkin and framed it. The front door was open just enough for me to hear jazz drifting out, that soft, smug kind of jazz people play when they want to look sophisticated without trying too hard. Inside, it smelled like cinnamon and cedar and something artificial I couldn't quite place. Probably some overpriced diffuser from Scandinavia. There were about a dozen people milling around, all design types, all pretending they weren't calculating who was getting the next promotion. And there she was. Madison. Standing next to the kitchen island in that emerald green blouse she wore on special occasions, but not the kind of special occasions we shared anymore. She was laughing. Her hand was wrapped around a glass of red wine. Her smile, the one I used to think was just for me, was aimed squarely at someone else. Grayson. I knew him by name only. One of the lead designers. Tall, sharp jawline, always wore a watch with the face on the inside of his wrist, the kind of detail that screams I read books about mindfulness. He was standing close, not close like friends, close like the air between them didn't matter. He handed her a glass of wine like it was theirs, a routine, practiced gesture. She took it without even looking. Like she expected it. Like it had been happening for a while. They both laughed when they saw me. Not shocked. Not startled. Just amused. That's when I heard it. Did you tell him about us? It was Grayson. He said it low, but not low enough. Everything in me froze. I was still standing by the doorway, rain still soaking the back of my collar. I hadn't even taken a step inside yet. And there it was, the sentence that cracked everything I'd been holding together for months. Madison didn't even blink. She sipped her wine, tilted her head slightly, and said with a smirk, Dinner isn't confession. Don't be dramatic. My ears rang. She said it like she was making a joke. But it wasn't a joke. Not to me. Because she knew I heard it. She wanted me to. She walked away like nothing happened, heels clicking softly against Jason's polished floor. I watched her float into the living room, settling into a conversation like she hadn't just dropped a grenade and walked off before it exploded. I stood there for maybe another minute. Long enough for someone to brush past me with a cheese plate and say, hey, you made it. Like I was late to a game night instead of walking into my own personal funeral. I made my way inside, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me leave. I watched them, her and Grayson. I watched how their bodies angled toward each other, how they whispered with their hands covering their mouths like teenagers passing notes in class. I watched how his hand grazed her back as they passed through the hallway, how she leaned in when he spoke. And it wasn't just flirting. It was muscle memory. I tried to talk to people. Tried to laugh at the right moments, nod at the right comments, even make eye contact. But everything felt off. Like I'd stumbled into a version of my life where I didn't belong anymore. An hour in, I locked eyes with Madison from across the room. She raised her glass to me, a mock toast, and smiled. Not an apologetic smile. Not a smile that said we need to talk. Just a smug little thing like she had the upper hand. And maybe she did. Because I didn't walk out. I stayed. And in doing so, I realized something painful. This wasn't the moment my world fell apart. That had happened long ago. This was just the moment I saw it clearly for the first time. The drive home that night felt like moving through a fog, not the kind that rolls in from the coast, soft and quiet, but the thick kind that clings to your windshield and makes everything ahead feel a little less certain. I barely remember turning out of Jason's long gravel driveway or how I managed to get onto the main road without running a stop sign. The rain had calmed to a drizzle, but inside me it was a storm, slow, suffocating, and louder than anything on the radio. Not that I turned the radio on. I didn't want to hear music. I didn't want noise. I wanted to hear the question echo again and again. Did you tell him about us? And her answer. Dinner isn't confession. Don't be dramatic. She said it like it was nothing. Like I was the one making a scene by simply existing. But that wasn't the first sign, it was just the first time she stopped hiding it. On that drive, everything started lining up. Puzzle pieces I'd ignored or maybe just couldn't bear to put together. There were so many of them now that I was willing to see. Like the perfume. She started wearing a new one out of nowhere. Spicy, rich, with a name I couldn't pronounce. I'd asked where it came from and she just said, trying something new. But she only wore it to work. Never around the house. Never on date nights, what few of those we still had. Then there were the late nights. The meetings that ran long. The text messages she'd half hide when I walked into the room. She used to toss her phone face up on the counter without a second thought. Now it was always face down or clutched in her hand like a secret. One time she left it at home. Said she was in a rush, forgot it on the kitchen island. She texted me from her coworker's phone later, telling me not to worry. But while it sat there buzzing with notifications, one message popped up that made my chest tighten like a vice. Miss you already heart G. Just G. But I didn't need a last name. I'd shown her when she came home. She said it was a friend. Said it was a joke. Said G was short for Gabriella, a designer at her office. I wanted to believe her so badly, I actually nodded and let her explain how G always sent goofy stuff and used emojis with everyone. I didn't press further. I told myself I was just being paranoid. Then there was the receipt. It was folded and stuffed in the pocket of her jacket, the one she never let me take to the dry cleaners. It slipped out when I grabbed it by mistake looking for my keys. Spa hotel in Greenville. 2 nights. King suite. Dinner reservation included. She said it was a gift. A thank you from a friend who couldn't use it. She went with a coworker, she said. A girl. Girls' trip. I asked if she had pictures. She said they agreed not to take any, disconnect from tech, she called it. I bought every word. Or maybe I rented it short-term, knowing deep down I'd have to return it eventually. And still, I let it slide. Because when you love someone, really love them, there's a part of you that works overtime to protect the version of them you fell for. You put up blinders, you rationalize, you invent context. You tell yourself it's just stress. Just a phase. Just your own insecurity. But it wasn't just that. It was a series of very intentional choices, her lies, my silence, and a growing distance we both pretended wasn't there. By the time I pulled into our driveway that night, the drizzle had stopped. The house looked the same as it always did, porch light on, warm yellow glow from the kitchen window, the same way it looked every night for the past 6 years. But something inside had shifted. The door creaked when I opened it. I remember that detail because it felt symbolic, like the house itself was groaning under the weight of the lie it had been holding. She was already in bed. I could hear the soft buzz of a podcast playing from her phone, some true crime thing she always used to fall asleep to. I stood in the hallway for a long time, just listening. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a husband coming home. I felt like a stranger who'd accidentally walked into the wrong life. The next morning, she acted normal. That kind of eerie normal that only makes things feel worse. Coffee made, hair tied up, laptop open on the counter. She asked if I wanted eggs. I said no. I watched her over the rim of my coffee mug. The way she smiled too much. The way her eyes didn't quite meet mine. Like she was playing a part she'd grown tired of but still needed to keep up appearances until the final curtain. Later that day, I started digging. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. I pulled up our shared bank account. She never noticed that I still had full access. There it was. Greenville Hotel. Dinner for 2 at a place called Vesper. A flower shop order, pickup only with the note line, for tomorrow. Same place. I didn't know what same place meant, but it wasn't for me. There were rideshare trips that didn't match her work schedule. A few to Grayson's part of town. A couple late at night from a location she never mentioned visiting, some rooftop bar we'd talked about going to once but never did. She'd gone. Just not with me. I should have felt rage. I should have punched a wall or shattered a plate or stormed into her office and screamed in front of everyone. But I didn't. I just sat there in my truck, parked outside the hardware store like I was waiting for the courage to buy a hammer and fix something. But nothing could be fixed anymore. Because this wasn't a break. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't some emotional lapse. This was betrayal. Strategic. Smooth. Cold. And she'd been doing it with a kind of confidence that only comes from knowing someone loves you enough to never suspect a thing. That night, I laid beside her, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing, soft, steady, undisturbed. She didn't know that I knew. Not yet. But I had stopped being the man in the dark. And soon, she'd feel the light of everything I'd uncovered. Because when someone builds a lie brick by brick, eventually, the wall caves in. And I was already pulling at the foundation. 3 days passed. 3 long, silent days where we pretended to still be a couple. I got up, went to work, came home, ate dinner beside her. We exchanged basic words, passed the salt, did you pay the water bill, I'm heading to bed. It was the kind of civility you only maintain when there's a war brewing underneath. But everything had shifted. I no longer saw her, I observed her. Noticed how she always left the room to take calls. How her phone was never more than a few inches from her. How her smiles seemed more like performances now, desperate to keep up the illusion. Then came Thursday night. Madison mentioned the office was hosting a rooftop event, a casual corporate mixer for the firm and their close clients. You should come, she said, pouring herself a glass of wine like we were talking about weekend brunch plans. I looked at her for a long second. You sure? Yeah, she replied too quickly. It'll be good. So people see we're, fine. That word again, fine. Such a thin mask for something broken beyond repair. I mean, she added, Jason even asked if you'd be there. I think it would mean a lot. I nodded. I don't even know why. Maybe because I wanted to see how deep the hole went. Maybe because I was tired of guessing. Or maybe because some part of me still wanted her to prove me wrong. The rooftop was downtown, one of those glassy hotels with a skyline view and cocktails named after Greek gods. I showed up in a clean button-up and the same leather jacket Madison once called irresistible. She used to like the way I looked when I wore it. I wasn't wearing it for her now. She greeted me at the elevator with a kiss on the cheek, quick, mechanical. She smelled like that same perfume again. The one I used to think she bought for me. People were everywhere, clients, designers, a few of the junior architects laughing by the bar. I spotted Jason deep in conversation with someone in a tailored suit. The vibe was somewhere between networking and social club. Champagne flutes clinking, jazz playing low under the buzz of conversations. And then there was Grayson. Of course. Standing by the edge of the rooftop, drink in hand, sleeves rolled up like he was trying to look effortless. Madison drifted to him like a moth finding its flame. And just like that, I disappeared from her periphery. For the next hour, I stood off to the side. I didn't even try to make small talk. I watched. Observed. Every hand graze. Every shoulder touch. The way they leaned into whisper. The little giggle she gave when he said something in her ear. If she even looked in my direction, I didn't notice. At one point, a woman I didn't know, Kayla, I'd later learn, approached us, probably trying to make polite conversation. She was kind. The kind of person who didn't know she was stepping on a landmine. So how are things with you and Madison? All good? She asked casually. I was about to answer with a standard, yeah, we're okay, when Madison spoke instead. She didn't hesitate. She looked right at Grayson, then back at Kayla with a small, knowing smile and said, ever since I realized there's someone who truly sees me for who I am. I stopped living out of habit. The music didn't stop, but it might as well have. The air changed. Kayla blinked. Grayson looked down like he wasn't expecting her to say it out loud. I froze. Madison didn't even flinch. She said it like it was nothing. Like it wasn't the verbal equivalent of stabbing someone mid-toast. She said it in front of strangers. In front of colleagues. In front of me. I set my drink down. Slowly. Carefully. And I walked out. No scenes. No shouting. Because when someone shoots you in the chest, you don't argue with them about why they pulled the trigger. You just bleed. I don't even remember the elevator ride. Or the city lights. Or the way the doorman nodded at me as I passed him. What I remember is the sound of her voice, that calculated, measured tone. Like she had rehearsed it. Like this whole thing was part of a carefully curated unveiling. She wanted people to know. She wanted me to know. and she wanted me to watch. I ended up walking the streets until my feet hurt. No direction, no destination. Just concrete beneath me and something broken inside me that I didn't have the words for. My phone buzzed a few times, but I didn't check it. I wasn't ready for whatever apology she thought would make it okay. Eventually, I ducked into an all-night diner. One of those places with fluorescent lights and booths that smell faintly of syrup no matter what time it is. I sat in the far corner and ordered coffee I didn't drink. The waitress asked if I was waiting for someone. I told her no. I didn't even realize I was crying until I saw the reflection in the window. Just a guy alone, shoulders slumped, eyes dull, hands shaking slightly as he stirred a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. That night, something shifted in me. Because it wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. It was performance. It was her saying, with every ounce of her body language and tone, "You're no longer part of my story. But you're still in the room to witness how it ends." By the time I made it back to my car, the city was asleep. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. Not broken. Not numb. Just done. I didn't go home right away. After the rooftop event, the city felt different. The air was sharp. Bitter. Like it knew something I didn't. I drove for a while without a plan, the streets half-empty, headlights flickering off wet asphalt. I think I circled the same 3 blocks downtown more than once. I couldn't bring myself to go home, not yet. Not to that kitchen table. Not to her. Eventually, I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour superstore. I sat there with the engine off, windows starting to fog, rain tapping softly against the windshield like a ticking clock. A part of me wanted to scream, or punch the steering wheel, or call someone, anyone, and just unload the mess that had become my life. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there in silence, listening to the storm settle, watching the lights inside the store blink and hum. I was surrounded by rows of carts, wet pavement, and an overwhelming feeling of nothingness. No anger. No sadness. Just hollow. At some point, maybe around midnight, I finally drove home. The neighborhood was quiet. That eerie kind of quiet where even the wind feels careful not to disturb anything. The porch light was still on. I remember noticing that, like she'd left it for me, like she thought a warm bulb might undo the damage of what she'd said in front of everyone. The front door creaked when I opened it. Only the kitchen light was on. The house felt off, like I had stepped into a memory I no longer belonged to. Her shoes were by the door. Her jacket tossed over the dining chair. Everything looked normal, but none of it felt that way. I called out softly, "Madison?" No answer. The bedroom was empty. So was the bathroom. She wasn't home. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt a sinking dread. Not the kind that explodes, the kind that seeps in slowly and wraps around your chest. That's when I saw it. Her laptop. It was open on the dining table, screen flickering in standby mode like a pulsing heart. It was angled toward the room, not closed or hidden away. Almost like it was left that way on purpose. I didn't mean to look. I swear to God I didn't. But the moment I passed it, the screen lit up, no password prompt, no lock screen. Just her email, wide open. A draft still sitting there. And my eyes, traitorous, exhausted, desperate, couldn't help but read. Subject line, "That night was magic. I want more." The name next to it, Grayson. My stomach turned. I clicked. The message wasn't long. But it didn't need to be. Every word felt like a punch straight to the chest. I keep thinking about that night. The way you looked at me, how easy it was to just be. I hadn't felt that alive in years. Not since before him. Being with you feels like slipping into the life I was supposed to have. And I can't stop smiling when I think about it. I love that we have this little world no one else gets. It makes everything feel like a game. I wonder when he'll figure it out. Honestly, I can barely keep from laughing sometimes. That last line, that was the one that did it. Not the romance. Not the betrayal. The laughter. The idea that this me was something she found amusing. This wasn't some sad mistake. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a woman torn between 2 lives. This was sport. This was entertainment. This was her, standing above the ruins of everything we built, pointing and laughing at how I still thought it was standing. I closed the laptop. Slowly. My hands were trembling, but my face was calm. It wasn't heartbreak. It was clarity. Everything made sense now. The perfume. The spa receipt. The messages. The smug looks. The gaslighting. The way she looked at me lately like I was furniture, something once useful, now just in the way. She didn't just cheat. She crafted it. Protected it. Enjoyed it. And I was the fool. The afterthought. The setup to her punchline. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. My reflection shimmered faintly in the dark TV screen. I looked older. Smaller. Like some version of me had already packed up and left, leaving behind a man with nothing but memories and regret. She came home an hour later. I didn't say anything. She walked in, heels in hand, humming something under her breath. She looked surprised to see me on the couch but covered it quickly with a smile. "Hey," she said, like everything was normal. Like she hadn't gutted me a few hours ago in front of a dozen people and then signed her name to the confession that she enjoyed every second of it. I nodded. She paused. "You okay?" Still, I nodded. She tilted her head slightly, maybe picking up on something in my tone or the stillness in the room. But she didn't press. She just yawned and headed down the hall. She didn't ask about my night. She didn't ask how I felt after her little rooftop declaration. She didn't ask anything. Because she thought she'd won. And in a way, maybe she had. But sitting there, alone in that dim room, I realized something. This wasn't about her anymore. It wasn't about proving anything. Or fixing anything. Or making her see what she had done. It was about me. And the quiet war I now had to fight, not against her, but against the part of me that still wanted to believe there was something worth saving. She came home that night like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't nized my presence in front of her coworkers. Like her email didn't exist. Like there wasn't a man in her life she was secretly texting about magic nights and laughing at the idiot who sleeps across the hall from her. She kicked off her shoes in the hallway. Dropped her keys in the little ceramic bowl we bought on a trip to Asheville back when trips still meant something. She poured herself a glass of wine, the cheap kind she always bought when she was pretending to be laid back, and leaned against the counter like this was just another Tuesday. "Long day," she said, almost to herself. "Those rooftop heaters were useless. I'm freezing." I looked at her from the living room. She was scrolling her phone, thumb moving lazily, face lit up by that soft glow. That face, so familiar, so much a part of my life, suddenly looked like it belonged to someone I hadn't met yet. Like a well-worn mask cracking at the seams. I didn't say anything. Not because I was trying to play it cool. But because I didn't know what to say to a ghost. When she finally looked up at me, it was casual. Like we were still a thing. Like we were still in the same world. "You okay?" she asked. I wanted to laugh. But I just nodded. "Yeah. Just tired." She smiled. Sipped her wine. "Yeah," she said. "Me too." Then she walked into the bedroom and closed the door. And that was it. That was the end. No screaming. No confrontation. No slamming doors or flying accusations. Just a slow, quiet unraveling of something that used to mean everything. I sat in that silence for hours. Just sat. I didn't move. Didn't check my phone. Didn't turn on the TV. I just stared at the spot where she had stood like I was trying to burn the moment into my memory. Because it was the last time she would look at me like she hadn't already left. Somewhere around 3 a.m. I got up and walked through the house one room at a time. Not looking for anything. Just feeling the space. Seeing what was still mine. The bookshelf filled with novels I picked out and she never read. The little dent in the wall from when we tried to move the couch ourselves. The framed photo in the hallway from our 3rd anniversary. The one she always said was her favorite. She hadn't looked at it in months. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom for a long time. She was asleep, curled away from me. Her side of the bed a tangle of sheets and soft breathing. Mine was still made. That felt symbolic. I didn't go in. I didn't say goodnight. I just backed away slowly, like I was leaving a crime scene. Because that's what this place had become. Not a home. Not a marriage. Just a perfectly staged lie with throw pillows. When I closed the guest room door behind me, it wasn't an act of anger. It was surrender. Not to her. To the truth. That night, I lay on the futon we always said we'd replace someday and stared at the ceiling, letting all of it come apart. All the memories. All the forgiveness I'd handed out like candy. All the chances I gave her because I believed in something that no longer existed. There was no more negotiating. No more trying. No more pretending that if I just did the right thing, she'd come back to the version of herself I fell in love with. Because that version, she was gone. And in her place was someone who was very good at playing house, very good at smiling, very good at moving her lips just enough to say all the right things without meaning any of them. She was a shell. And I was the loyal dog waiting at the door for someone who wasn't coming back. So I stopped waiting. I stopped believing. And in that quiet hour, where even the clock seemed hesitant to tick too loudly, I made a decision. I was done being the one holding all the weight. I was done trying to fix something she had already buried. I was done being her placeholder. She could keep the stories. the lies, the games. I take my dignity, and whatever broken pieces were still mine. The morning after, I checked into a motel off I-85. One of those grim places with flickering hallway lights and carpets that smelled like mold and bleach. I didn't care. I just needed somewhere that wasn't there. Somewhere without her perfume lingering on the sheets or her voice echoing in the quiet. For the first time in months, I felt like I could exhale. It wasn't peace. It wasn't even relief. But it was something that didn't come with the constant ache of pretending. I called out of work and used the next few days to start digging into everything. Madison didn't know I'd left, or maybe she did and didn't care. Either way, she didn't reach out. I think she thought I'd just keep playing dumb, that I'd stay in orbit around her. She was wrong. I found a lawyer on the second day, recommended by a friend who went through a nasty divorce a few years back. The guy didn't mince words. "She's already seen someone," he said after the initial consultation, skimming through my notes. "She's preparing for the exit. You don't email someone, 'I want more,' and then stick around out of love." I nodded, barely holding back the tension that had taken up permanent residence in my jaw. "She's already met with an attorney," he added, flipping through documents. "Filed a pre-consult. Wanted to know her options. Alimony, asset division, custody." "We don't have kids," I interrupted. He paused. Even more telling then, she's getting her ducks in a row. While I'd been mowing the lawn, fixing cabinet doors, and thinking of repainting the bedroom, she'd been calculating a way out. Quietly, legally. That hurt in a way even the affair didn't. I requested joint financial records. They told the story even clearer than her emails. Dinner bills for two in places she never mentioned. A second hotel booking in Greenville I hadn't noticed before. Same dates as that gift weekend. Flowers sent to a billing address that wasn't ours. Venmo transfers labeled, "Just us dizzied." She hadn't just lied. She'd organized the lie, built it like a structure, with beams and foundations and escape routes. And I had helped build it by refusing to see the signs. That realization settled over me like cement. I wasn't just hurt. I was humiliated. The betrayal wasn't an accident. It was a decision, repeated, covered, polished to look like life. But it was rot. I stopped wondering why. I stopped imagining conversations where she explained herself. Because deep down, I knew her reasons didn't matter anymore. When someone plans your exit behind your back, you don't ask for their logic. You just walk out before they can hand you the script. Saturday morning, I returned to the house to grab my things. I came early, hoping to avoid her. But fate had other ideas. She was there, and so was Grayson. They were on the couch, half laughing at something on the TV. His arms stretched across the back. Her body leaned slightly toward him, like they'd always been that way. Like this was their place now, not mine. I didn't say a word. Just walked in and started boxing up the pieces of what used to be my life. She didn't offer help. He didn't get up. I grabbed the essentials, my laptop, passport, documents. One framed photo of my dad from my old office. Left the rest. The books we bought together. The souvenir mugs. The Christmas ornaments with our names etched in them. Let them rot. Let them mean nothing. I passed them in the hallway on my way out. Grayson tried to say something, some awkward attempt at civility. But I didn't give him the dignity of a reply. Everything had already been said. In her silence. In his presence. In the laugh she gave him that used to belong to me. I reached the door. My hand was on it when she tossed out one last comment. I don't even remember the words. I just remember not stopping. Not turning around. Not giving her the satisfaction of one more reaction. I stepped into the sunlight. Not healed. Not whole. But free. That was the end.